Hello, everyone. This is Nadia Hernandez, executive producer at ELS. Welcome to today's ELSX, and thank you for joining us. ELS is a community that brings together executive assistants supporting the world's most influential leaders. We cultivate professional development by providing an experience for assistants to connect, collaborate, and contribute solutions to their greatest challenges. We're also the creator of the ELS Forum, a professional development experience for executive assistants held in 26 cities worldwide. At the forum, attendees gain support, training, and inspiration from world-renowned instructors and peers to discover a renewed sense of purpose and passion in their career. If you're interested in attending a forum, you can find more information at elsforum.com. Today, I'm thrilled to partner with Bonnie Low-Kramen, international speaker, corporate trainer, and one of the most respected experts on workplace issues. For 25 years, Bonnie worked as the personal assistant to Oscar winner Olympia Dukakis and is the author of the bestseller, Be the Ultimate Assistant. In 2011, she resigned from her work with Olympia Dukakis to pursue her dream of building a stronger and more respectful global workplace. Hello and welcome, Bonnie.
Hi, Nadia. Great to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Bonnie has been speaking and teaching in 14 countries and counting. Today, she will share what she is hearing and seeing, up-to-the-minute global trends and universal truths. There will be an opportunity to get your questions answered. Please submit your questions at any time via the Questions tab on your webinar toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen. You can download a copy of the handout for today's webinar via the Handout tab on GoToWebinar toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen. A recording of this webinar and a certificate of attendance will be emailed to you tomorrow. It is now my pleasure to hand it on over to Bonnie.
Well, thank you, Nadia, and welcome everyone. I'm so excited to be here for ELSX, which is such a cool way to share up-to-the-minute information with the global community. You know, we have assistants and professionals from all over the world on this webinar right now, and it's just remarkable that we're able to do this. At the end of this, towards the end of this presentation, I'll be opening it up to Q&A when we can talk about anything and everything that the issues that I'm raising. As Nadia shared, in the last 7 years, I've been in 14 countries. And as much talking as I do, I listen twice as much. And what I've begun to see are global trends and universal truths that are as true in New York City as they are in New Delhi, India, you know? And through email and through conferences like the ELS Forum, assistants are sharing honestly what's really going on in this workplace. And it is that I want to share with you, because what I see all over the world is that so many assistants are so busy, heads down, doing their work every single day, that they tend to feel kind of isolated, alone, and perhaps you have felt that as well. Today, I want to reveal to you what I know for sure is in process, very hot global trends. Okay, let's start with some data. 250 million assistants in the world, 10 million in the United States, and 95 to 98% are female. And those of you who've heard me before and have read my articles know how interested I am in gender issues. Some might say obsessed with gender issues. It seems to me so obvious that there's no way to talk about this profession without speaking directly to how it is dominated by females. And while we want more men in the profession, this is the data right this minute. And it is absolutely impacting how we work with one another, how we work with our executives, how we relate to HR and recruiters and trainers, etc. So it is absolutely important that we acknowledge that. Now, here's an idea that I have been talking about for at least the last year and that I love, that you are the CEO of You Incorporated. That, yes, I'm aware that each of you most likely is working for a company and you receive a paycheck from that company. I would also suggest to you that each of you are the CEO of You Incorporated, that each day you get to decide how your company's doing. How's the financial health of your company? How is your company functioning, in terms of your actions each day? This idea bumps right up against the antithesis of it, which is victim mentality. That in the workplace of 2019, what I'm seeing and hearing, not only from assistants, from successful assistants, but from their leaders, from managers, from executives, from CEOs, they want you to be the CEO of You Incorporated. Leaders need you to be the CEO of You. A leader taking charge, being proactive, thinking ahead, as opposed to the old paradigm with leaders at the top of the pyramid and lowly assistants far down. Those days are over. They are over. And so the mindset, our attitudes towards this role are changing. Now, these trends that I'm about to speak about, it's not like a light switch it's just going to turn on and off. It is a process and it is gradual, but I assure you they are happening. And I'm going to come back to this idea about that you are the CEO of You Incorporated, that you're in charge. This is your life. This is your career. This is your livelihood. And you get to choose how you operate in it. So here we go. Some hot global trends. Here they are. I'm calling it the new normal. The first one is that assistants are taking their seat at the table. Perhaps you've heard that term. I mean it literally and figuratively, that assistants are taking their seat at the conference table, sometimes next to their executive, not only to take notes, but to have your opinion asked, to have your presence valued because you bring a lot of information to that table. In this workplace of 2019, many assistants are functioning as executive business partners. That's a term we're using a lot lately. Executive business partners to your leaders, which is more of a peer-like relationship. And as your executive is out front and leading in his or her own way, you are doing the same thing. And how this manifests is that you are copied on important emails. You're not CC'd or blind CC'd. You are on the top line. You are considered part of the leadership team. You are taking your seat at the table. And, I'll ask students in our workshops, is it true that people will say things to you as the assistant that they would never say to your executive? And typically what happens is, lots of nodding and laughing, and that's a big fat yes. People just say things to you as the assistant. That automatically means that you have information that they don't have, that your executive doesn't have, and that makes you powerful and influential and an executive business partner. So I'm saying to you that if you should be at the table this next week, for example, at the meeting, but you haven't yet been invited, I'm suggesting that you offer, that you say to your executive, I would like to sit in on that meeting because of XYZ, or some assistants say they just show up at the meeting and they don't even wait to be invited because you know better about a lot of things. So take your seat at the table. That's a trend that we're seeing all over the world. And happy to take questions about that later. And let me just say one other thing about that, is that not every assistant in every company wants to have their seat at the table. Not everybody wants that. Not everybody wants to be an executive business partner. But if you do, then choose your moment and take your seat. The second trend is about titles. Titles are changing. Oh my goodness, what a conversation is going on right now around the world. The word secretary is pretty much phased out, even at law firms. That seems to be the last place where the word secretary is being used. And in schools, especially elementary schools and junior highs, there's still school secretaries. But generally speaking, the word is being phased out in favor of other words. And get this, even the word assistant is getting phased out at this point. It's still very prominent, and chances are many of you have the word assistant in your title, but they are changing, and it's reflective of the responsibility that you're holding. The new titles we're hearing are executive business partner, administrative manager, administrative coordinator, chief of staff, administrative project manager, all words that are speaking to the level of increased responsibility that assistants are taking on in 2019. Oftentimes, the word assistant is being removed in order to justify paying you more money. Because of course, everyone on this call knows that titles are related to job descriptions, and of course, job descriptions and titles are related to compensation. And what I see, the bad news is, what I see all over the world is that too many assistants are severely underpaid. That, in the aftermath of 2008, with the financial meltdown, assistants who remained have increased responsibility, but often did not get a change of title and certainly did not get a change in compensation. And that's not okay. What I can tell you is that the job market is very strong, so there's competition for roles these days. It's an incredibly strong job market for executive assistants. There are more jobs out there available than there are people to fill them. The skilled, talented, tech-savvy assistants are so needed. The recruiters are really scrambling out there. So titles are a place that you can negotiate. I hear from assistants all the time, almost every day, who are figuring out ways to justify the change in their title and also changes in job descriptions. Too many assistants are complaining that the job description that you're currently doing bears very little resemblance to the job description you were hired to do. So there is a lot of volatility right now. What I see is that there's never been a better time to be an assistant than right now. But I also see that there's never been a more complicated time to be an assistant than right now. And these issues that I'm talking about at this moment are contributing to those complications. So next up are about interviews and onboarding. Here's an interesting piece, is that what I see is that more and more assistants are involved in the hiring process for new assistants. And well, you should be, because who knows better than assistants about what a team needs and the kinds of skills that you're looking for. It's not that you as the assistant should be the only decision maker. Of course, that's not true. But should you be involved in the process? Absolutely. And if you're not being asked already to be sitting in on those interviews, I highly recommend suggesting that you do that, that you suggest sitting in. Also, onboarding those same assistants. What I hear all over the world is that the onboarding systems at too many companies is lacking, is really lacking. My own mother was a legal secretary, and those were the old days, were the days when an assistant, a secretary would come on board at a company and, welcome to our company, first day, and shown her desk and her phone and her filing cabinet, and then waved goodbye and said, okay, see you in 25 years. You'll get your gold watch then. And shockingly, I'll say that at conferences, and inevitably somebody in the audience will say, that's how it is at my company. In 2019, we know as assistants that beginnings are very important. First, we all remember our first day. We can do a much better job at onboarding at many companies. And again, who knows better than the assistants about what's needed to really set somebody up for success? So here's what I see is that the assistants who see the gap, if I call them the gaps, if you see this as a gap at your company, a trend is that you as the assistant can identify the gap, put an idea, one sheet in writing about what possible solutions you see as a remedy for the onboarding that's lacking, for example. And then you could volunteer to participate in that solution. Those are the actions, the proactive actions of assistants who are getting promoted and changes in title and more money. That's what's happening. That, the days, we all know that assistants see and hear everything. And what I see is that 2019 is a time when assistants are now saying what they're seeing and hearing, right? You see and hear everything, let us now speak. We need to speak up and write and say what it is we see. Now along these lines for this bullet, these things also apply to executives. Interesting that all over the world, I hear a similar complaint about executives from assistants, that assistants say, our executives, whether they're a millennial or on up and older, they don't know what to do with us. They don't know how to leverage an assistant. They don't know what an assistant does. And that's chasing really good people away. Assistants are quitting potentially great jobs because they're not feeling fully utilized or leveraged. So what I see is that assistants are now being involved with the interviews for new executives, just as part of the process. And assistants in companies have begun to create short orientations for new executives, specifically about what an assistant does at the company. Leaders don't know what they don't know. So how would they know? So on one hand, you can't blame them for not knowing what to do with an assistant. And on the other hand, we can be helpful to them and set them up for success to know how to utilize an assistant. So really interesting what's going on. And then there's this. Perhaps, no doubt you've heard about the Me Too and Time's Up movements that began in with real visibility in 2017. So it's been 2 years now. And of course, these hashtags are about sexual harassment in the workplace. And the data is clear that it is primarily women who are the targets of sexual harassment. Although it's not that men are not sexually harassed, but the percentage of men who are sexually harassed is so tiny compared to the females who are being abused in this way. Now, what we know is that sexual harassment is just a one piece of the bigger problem, which is workplace bullying, the big umbrella term for behaviors that are demeaning and abusive in our workplace. And the bad news that I need to share with you is that what I see is that workplace bullying is a global epidemic. That's a strong phrase, but what I see and hear is that it's absolutely true. We ask assistants all over the world, and it is a huge problem. The good news is that these issues are being exposed in a huge way, that the Equal Opportunity Employment, the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The cases are up 4 times since 2017, that finally the silence has been broken about this issue. And this is a global trend, no doubt. I was in Munich in the November after the October when the story really broke in 2017. And I was in a room with 120 assistants from all over Europe. So there was a table from France and one from Belgium and Germany and on. You get the picture. And interesting that the European assistants, confirmed that sexual harassment is a huge problem all over Europe. There was no country that said it wasn't. It just happens to be worse in some, like Africa, like South America, like Italy. And B, they were relieved about what was happening in America, that we broke the silence. And in breaking the silence and shining a light on this issue, we know as assistants, then we have a chance to solve it. So I was at HR Southwest in last October in Fort Worth with 2,300 HR professionals, and they confirmed that they are very busy creating new policies and new initiatives to put muscle into policies that already exist regarding workplace bullying and sexual harassment. I mean, truly, to boil it down is this, that to abuse people, to demean people, whether they're a woman or a man, to sexually harass, to bully, to humiliate, chases people away. They are demotivated and motivated actually to quit, versus when you treat people with respect and you treat people as individuals and not a number, with dignity and respect and a sense of belonging and value in the company, those people stay and they are loyal and their productivity goes up, morale goes up, and guess what? Profits go up. That is not a difficult concept to understand, yet we know, I'm sure many people on this call know how difficult it is in practice to have that be the case. So the issue is complicated. Those of you who have heard me speak and read my articles know that this is an issue that I am completely committed to and passionate about, that it is imperative that we take this on in order to not chase great people away, because that's what's happening. And that's a lose-lose situation for the individual and for companies. It's lose-lose on every level. So hooray, I'm happy I lived to see the day that we are talking about this as we are, and the folks over at ELS Forum are very supportive of tackling these issues too. My own feeling on this is that if we as a profession, as assistants, do not talk openly about these very tough challenges at conferences like the ELS Forum and be the ultimate assistant, where are we going to talk about it, right? So that's my point of view on it. All right, next up is disaster planning. Some might say me too and time's up, it's a disaster. I would, but in disaster planning, I'm talking about the natural disasters that have been happening all over the world and the man-made ones. No doubt, you're all from all over the world, but we certainly have heard about hurricanes Harvey, and I'm from New Jersey, so Hurricane Sandy and the mudslides and tsunamis and blizzards, on and on and on, depending on your part of the country. And then we have the man-made disasters. It seems to me, and probably to you, that we can't turn on the news without hearing about the latest shooting or terrorism. You know what I'm talking about. So it's important that assistants are taking this on. I'm aware that your job description probably does not say that you need to be involved in disaster planning, but I'm here to tell you that as a hot global trend, assistants are making it their business to take a fresh look at your disaster plan at your company. Only you know if you have a great plan in place. And if you do, awesome. And I hope that you'll help other people at other companies create a plan that's workable. You know, do we have a way to get to our people, and are we ready? Because that's the question, right? I believe it's true that none of us listening to this call right now can say that it's never going to happen to me. It's never going to happen in my town. It's never going to happen in my company. We can't say that because of what's been going on in the world. We have disasters happening, natural ones and man-made disasters, in every corner that we can think of. And so my message here is that if you, as an assistant, are taking a look at your company, your department, your organization, and really evaluate that question, are we ready? Are we ready if we had an active shooter, if we had, you know, the extreme weather coming our way? Do we have what we need? Do we have the supplies on hand in our office, in our homes, in our cars? It's a new way of thinking. The Department of Homeland Security has a great website filled with resources, and what I see is that assistants all over the world are making it their business to get educated about this issue, simply because it's happening more and more. And companies are playing catch up to figure out, how are we going to deal with this, running the what ifs? And there's no better set of people running the what ifs than assistants. So we can talk about that if you'd like to during the Q&A. Succession planning. Succession planning is a term that I'm sure each of you know, but that it's primarily referred to leaders, right? We refer to leadership as having a succession plan. But I ask you, is anyone in your company thinking about succession planning for assistants? Most assistants I ask this question to say no. Here's the thing. We, in a very short amount of time in the world, we're going to have baby boomers retiring in massive numbers with amazing knowledge. They've been at the company for, you know, who knows, 15, 20, 25, 30 years of history walking out the door unless we do something about it now. And when I talk about this issue in conferences, I see assistants' faces and their eyes are like deer in the headlights, like, oh my gosh, what happens when these people start leaving? And of course, people leave for other reasons besides retirement. The question is, are we ready? Do you have an employee, you know, a handbook, a manual? Some assistants refer to it as, you know, the Bible, that you have both in hard copy and in an electronic version, so that when anyone leaves, that the place doesn't fall apart. That's really where we're going here. But this whole notion of planning for assistants leaving an organization is truly a new idea for most organizations. And if you're the person who brings this to the attention of HR and leaders, it makes you more valuable, more relevant, and certainly really important to the organization if you can be involved in that process to prepare for when people start leaving. I promise you that this is an idea that in the majority of companies could really use to be fleshed out. This whole idea of succession planning for assistants, so that we're ready when folks start leaving. Professional development. So in 2019, I am still continuing to do what I refer to as first-time training in many companies all over the United States and Canada and Europe. That this idea of investing in the professional development of assistants, of the administrative staff, is still a pretty new idea in 2019. Not as new as it was, say, 5 years ago or 7 years ago, but it's still a pretty new idea. And it speaks to playing catch up with the world. Historically, the administrative staff is not a group of people that was traditionally invested in because they didn't have to. But in 2019, it is not an option anymore. It must be an absolute necessity. And in fact, one of the trends we're seeing is that a negotiating point for recruiters and for assistants is to build into your compensation an annual training budget, where it's not a question mark. Do I get to go to training or do I not get to go to training? For too many assistants, it's arbitrary. If you happen to have a manager who's a fan of training, you get to go. If you happen to be working for a manager who is not a fan of training or doesn't see the value, you don't get to go. And that strategy, that haphazard, whimsical strategy, is not working anymore, not given the complications of this workplace. Because professional development, it's not one size fits all. It's not that every assistant needs the exact same kind of training. The job descriptions are too broad and very deep, so that one assistant may need heavy duty Excel training and another one may need event planning, a workshop in event planning. Another may need leadership training because they're managing a team of assistants. It is not one size fits all. So this notion of investing in your professional development must be a change of mindset in companies, among leaders, among HR professionals, so that assistants are fully supported and endorsed to receive professional development. So A, our leaders need to understand that it's an absolute necessity, and B, assistants are, we're seeing a trend that assistants are receiving an annual training budget where you as the assistant have the autonomy to decide, help decide what training it is that you go to, which conference, which workshop, is it online, is it in person? Because again, it's not one size fits all. The annual training budgets in the United States that we're hearing are in the $2,000–$3,000 range is the average, and then they go up from there. We've heard higher, $5,000, $8,000. Sometimes it's a figure that is not set, but that executives, the given is that you're going, and the price tag is just not named ahead of time. We had an assistant at one of the forums, and she isn't the only one, but she's going for her MBA right now to the tune of $86,000, and her company is paying for that happily because of the level of responsibility that she holds at the company. This is not money that is being spent resentfully. Once it's understood, the justification is understood, that your value, your responsibilities are such that this additional training is necessary in order for you to succeed, not only now in 2019, but into 2020 and beyond. So this is a hot trend. And if you're not already receiving an annual training budget, I certainly urge you to ask for it. What we know is that many companies have training dollars, but it's not well advertised on the team. So it could be a matter of just asking for it. But the main point here is whatever you do, if you are serious about this profession, it is vital, absolutely essential for you to receive ongoing training. Next, along the learning lines, is to lead lunch and learns. What is clear, and I'm sure you would agree, that on your team at your company, you have SMEs, SME. You know that term as subject matter expert. That's what it stands for. Now, everybody as an assistant at your company was chosen. Somebody at some point chose each and every person to work at your company because they are a subject matter expert on at least one thing. That's why they were hired, right? So what companies are doing, what team leads are doing, sometimes it's the assistant to the CEO who takes this on, is to explore those areas of expertise that each of your team already possesses, and to ask them, to engage them in leading learning for the rest of the team. Sometimes that's through a lunch and learn that happens monthly or quarterly. And this idea is gaining traction all over the world. Of course, it's valuable to bring in outside trainers and outside educators, but I'm here to tell you that assistants all over the world are digging into and understanding what the expertise is of the people who are already working on the staff, that they're already being paid a salary. Why not really understand what is it that they're experts in? And most people, I would think, are experts in more than one thing. Now, not everyone is comfortable teaching, that's a given, but it doesn't have to be absolutely everyone. But chances are, once the ball gets rolling in this area, it's amazing what teams all over the world are accomplishing just within themselves. As Nadia shared with you, I worked with Olympia Dukakis, the actress, for 25 years. And Olympia, many, many times over the years, would say to me, Bonnie, you don't have to be an expert in everything, but you do need to know who the experts are to go to get the answers we need quickly. And I would say to you, she was right 25 years ago, and she's right today, that each of you are experts in many things, but you can't be an expert in everything. So this is a way that we can leverage the areas of expertise of our whole team. And it makes a lot of sense. And if you're already doing this, then you can expand the program. And hopefully your leaders will be completely supportive, because, wow, it's so beneficial to the entire company. And then last on my bulleted list here is about liaising with IT about AI and digital assistants. We've been hearing a lot about AI lately, artificial intelligence, and digital assistants. Many of us got for the holidays, Alexa or Siri, or, all of these digital assistants, Google Home. And they are making their entrance into the corporate world. That companies, assistants at companies, are reporting that these devices are entering, but that right now it's pretty much in the baby stages. Here's what I see is that these devices are not going to replace you. They're not going to replace you. There's no device, no machine that can replace the talents and skills of a human executive assistant who is intuitive and resourceful, etc. However, they can be your tools. They can be tools for executive assistants. And so my message here is that the trend I see is for us not to be afraid of these devices and to embrace them, to know, A, they're coming, we can't stop it, and that B, they're going to be amazing tools for us. But it'll be important that we know how to use them, how to program them, and that means liaising with IT. And if these devices have not made their entrance into your company yet, I suggest, asking your IT folks, is it coming? What's happening? what I see all over the world is that the assistants hold so much information in your computers, and yet there's all this fear about cybersecurity and hacking, and the data shows that one of the weakest links at any company is the administrative staff. So mainly because of all the information that you have on your computer, that you take home and your laptops, etc. We need to educate ourselves about this. Some companies are doing this really well and others not so much. That somehow there's a belief that the assistants will figure it out. Well, there's too much at stake. If you watch the news at all, you see how technology is having to play catch up with, protecting the data, and you are a great holder of the data. So the trend is that assistants who are making it their business to understand the technology and to educate yourself will be ahead of the game and really be setting yourselves up for more responsibility at your company. Now, clearly, if you're not a techie and you don't really enjoy all of this talk about artificial intelligence, I'm not telling you to twist yourself into a pretzel and become somebody you're not. But if you really love this stuff, it's another way to set yourself apart in your company and become even more valuable. So those are a few of the biggest trends that I'm seeing around the world. So before we go to Q&A, I just want to say that the leaders I speak with are excited about having assistants who view themselves as the CEO of You Incorporated, who view themselves as the leader's executive business partners. Because the truth is that this complicated workplace is complicated for leaders too. And they're pedaling as fast as they can. And the news flash is that we only have 24 hours in a day. We are all human here, despite the proliferation of all of these wonderful devices that we have to figure out. So let us use one another and help one another as mentors and as resources. And that too is a global trend. And to be proactive about collaborating with our leaders. So Nadia, I think I'm ready to deal with some questions, and let's talk about anything and everything that is on anybody's mind.
Okay, yes, Bonnie, we do have quite a few questions. So starting with the first one, do you believe that obtaining multiple certifications helps to advance one's career, or is it experience or a combination of both?
I believe it is a combination of both. I believe your resume should be updated constantly along with your LinkedIn profile, so that your LinkedIn profile should match your resume. And if you are job searching, for example, what leaders want to see and what recruiters want to see is that you are committed to ongoing learning. I often hear from assistants that, they feel deficient because they don't hold an actual college degree. And what I say to that, and Nadia, we've heard this from numerous other speakers at the forums, that don't let that stop you. To not have a college degree, an official 4-year degree, should not stop a talented assistant from pursuing a C-suite gig. That it might mean calling the recruiter on the phone or calling somebody, if you're resourceful, use your talents and skills being resourceful. And sometimes it's just not going to work to do an online application, and you're going to have to get to the human to make the case for you. The beauty of these certifications is simply that it shows your commitment to learning. And of course, if it has application to your current role, all the better. But that's what it demonstrates. And then, of course, those of you who enjoy learning, and I have a feeling that's every single one of you because you're on this webinar right now, you understand the confidence that comes from learning. That's the wonderful byproduct of going through the ELS forum or BTUA, is the confidence that you feel after it's over because you've received validation for the things that you already knew, and that you receive validation that, you know what, I'm doing that really, really well. And then there's also confidence that comes from learning material that has immediate applicability. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you, Bonnie. We do have a question on, it's a specific scenario. I have been given a promotion to office manager alongside my EA role, and I was wondering if that role could be called chief of staff. What do you think? And I have a follow-up question for you after that's answered, Bonnie.
Right. Many assistants are advocating for that. That title means different things to different HR directors and to different leaders. It will be about doing your research on the history of the company. Has there ever been a chief of staff? Somehow, what I've heard is that some HR directors are frightened of that title because it sounds so powerful that they automatically think, even if it's not true, that you're going to be going for a huge promotion. But let me say something about that. I urge you to do your research about what your role is worth in your market, because I see too many assistants who are underpaid. And so once you do your research through meeting with a local recruiter and going on Indeed and Salary.com and Glassdoor, et cetera, talking to other people in your industry, it is important that if you are delivering such a wonderful responsibility, meaning you're not only a talented executive assistant, but you're also supervising other people, which are two separate skills. They are not equivalent. Just if someone is a talented EA, it does not equate with being a talented manager of people. So if you are office manager and you feel like you could use some supplemental education, I urge you to get it. That's leadership training to manage other people. That's a very specific skill, and not everybody does it well. Many assistants are thrown into that role. Assistants are so capable and competent that you often get thrown a lot of additional responsibility, whether you're ready or not. So what I'm saying is that it's important to speak to the reality of the situation. I would ask all of you, could your company function well without you? The answer is probably absolutely not. And one more thing about money before we take the related question, Nadia, and that is, I am not even advocating greediness in the workplace at all. I want us to move to a place where assistants are being paid fairly for the responsibilities that they are holding. Let's get to fair. We're far from it right now. So if you're currently office manager, you most likely have reasons for wanting to be chief of staff, and that's absolutely, those are valid reasons. I think it's completely fine. And let me also add that titles matter. Some assistants say, well, you know what? I don't care what I'm called. I don't care what anybody calls me. Well, that may be true, that you might not care personally about your own title, but the world cares. The world cares. The people in your company care. The world, this is what it is. People care about titles because it directly relates to the money you make and the job responsibilities you hold.
That's a great actually segue, Bonnie, because we have quite a few questions on titles. And I know you discussed that about title change. You mentioned executive business partner, and we have some questions if there are tiers of titles for executive assistants, EA1, 2, and so forth. Could you provide briefly, because we have quite a few questions I want to get to, some examples of additional titles as well?
Right. There are a lot of senior executive assistants, senior, I have a list. I have a list of about 60 titles that I can send to you, Nadia, in PDF. And this proliferation of so many titles in the world is a contributing factor to the confusion in the workplace, that it's not the same for each company. And, some assistants complain that at a company, somebody is named an executive assistant, but they're not really doing the job responsibilities of an executive assistant. It's not cut and dried information here. So how about I share this document with you, Nadia, and you can share with everybody on the call. Would that be good?
Yeah, sure, that would be great.
Okay.
We have quite a few more questions I want to get to. How do you address poor company cultures that view administrative professionals / executive assistants as disposable roles that just anyone can
Right.
do, and they are unwilling to invest any money into your development?
Right. Well, let me preface this by saying that I am not an advocate ever of quitting jobs quickly, of quitting before you've really discovered if it's necessary to leave. But that said, every job ends sometime. And that idea, that notion that what you just said, that assistants are disposable, blah, 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 is an obsolete idea. In 2019, that is not the case anymore. It is faulty thinking, it's obsolete thinking, and I would urge who's ever asking that to read up on it, to do the research, to present a proposal in writing about, if you're wanting training or if you're wanting some revised job responsibility. And if that doesn't work, it may be time to move on. That the good news is that the job market is very strong right now, and that there is an acknowledgement in the general workplace that assistants are functioning in ways that they didn't function 10, 15 years ago. And a lot of people point to 2008 when the financial meltdown happened and there was so much upheaval in the workplace. So that was 11 years ago. This is, again, not like a light switch, that these old ideas are hard to die, except that the good news is that I think social media has been a game changer when it comes to this. It could be that you print out articles related to this. I wrote many articles about this subject, that how executive assistants are a CEO's most powerful secret weapon. And, that pesky 24 hours in a day, managers, executives, business owners are not able to get it all done. They need you. They need assistance to do the work you're doing, to find the gaps, to take on responsibilities, to leave an executive open to doing the things that only an executive can do, business development, to have those meetings. Answer the question, what's in it for them if they turn their head around? I can tell you that as a global trend, assistants are being successful in doing this because they're listening to webinars like this, they're going to the forums, they're bringing back the data. The data shows that an engaged workforce, that assistants who are invested in are ones who will stay. It increases employee retention. So what's the choice? I mean, an assistant can move on to another company that will give them professional development. So it's a lose-lose. But I think before quitting, it's important to share the data and to not quit before at least trying.
Okay, Bonnie, we have some questions lumped on getting a seat at the table, and I apologize. I know there are a lot of questions, but we'll probably only be able to get through 2 more. So we have an example of someone who has been supporting a senior VP. She mentions without a college degree, but has 30 years of experience.
Right.
And she would like to better communicate, to make sure that she's valued and has that seat at the table. And then we have a similar circumstance where someone an EA was actually invited to a meeting, and then their attendance was considered optional. So how do they ensure that they get that seat at the table, and how can they handle if they're
Right.
kind of being shown as not needed?
Right. Okay. So the good news is today's a new day. Even if you've been at the company for 20 years, 30 years, 5 minutes, today is a new day to do something different. And one of the things that assistants are doing differently is that they're putting things in writing that if their presence is considered optional at a meeting, to write a short note to your executive about why that isn't true, that your presence is optional. That in our classes, I love using the idea that assistants often know better. You know better about a lot of things, and sometimes you see things that your executive does not. And the smartest executives out there are the ones who will take you seriously. Now, here's the thing: to put something in writing, not anything terribly long, but just to say, I've been giving this a lot of thought about, what happened regarding the meeting yesterday. And to put something in writing about a very thoughtful idea, no emotions, just facts, about why you want to proceed in a different way than what's been happening, to put it in writing communicates the seriousness with which you're taking this issue. It is not just verbal, which can go into the ether. To put it in writing sends an entirely different message. What I suggest to each and every one of you is today's a great new day to look at your department, to look at what's happening with fresh eyes. Look at it with the eyes of a leader, with the eyes of a manager. If you were in charge, what would you do? Now, these changes in mind are not going to happen overnight. Like if you're told no to not attend the meeting next week, all right, so you don't go. But how about there's going to be a next time, a next meeting that you absolutely should be there because you're very involved in that project. You can either just show up or you can make your case again. The idea that you don't take no for an answer, an absolute answer, that's being the CEO of You Incorporated. You're taking responsibility for your role. It's not only that you're there to do a job description, but you're there for what you know and who you know. And honestly, assistants can help their leaders be better ones by, metaphorically taking them by the hand and educating them because they're not learning it in business school, and they're trying to run as fast as they can every day. They need assistance to offer the orientation, to give them a very simple justification about why it makes sense for you to be at that table at that meeting, what's in it for them if you're there. And then you show up at the table and you hear something during the meeting, and then you say, well, I have another thought about that. May I share it? And say it with confidence. I hope that makes sense to you. And I promise you that this is happening all over the world and it's working. Your manager, and when you're right, when you speak up at a meeting and you're like, oh, wow, well, Debbie, really, that's a really good point you just made. I assure you, they're going to, if you can't be at the meeting next Wednesday, they're going to say, you know what, we better reschedule because Debbie can't be there.
Thank you, Bonnie. I think that's an excellent note to leave off on. I know we still have a few more questions, but I, of course, want to be respectful of everyone's time and make sure I have able to express my gratitude to Bonnie. Thank you so much for your time today and everything that you're doing to progress the administrative profession. I know that Bonnie will be leading a masterclass for executive assistants at our upcoming ELS forums in San Francisco, Fort Lauderdale, Philadelphia, Nashville. I know we had some Nashville EAs listen in, Columbus, Charlotte, and many more. Before I sign off, I have a few final reminders, but Bonnie, would you like to say any closing comments?
Yes, I would. I want to thank everyone for listening in. I hope you will come to an ELS forum where I'm going to be, and then there's so many more. It's just terrific programming. And then, of course, be the ultimate assistant. Vicki Evans and I do these 2-day workshops all over the world, and the cities are up on the screen now. You are welcome to take advantage of the discount many forum attendees have. The most important thing is that you keep learning. I want to thank you, and I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Mark Twain, and it's, the 2 most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. So I know you each have your reasons for doing what you're doing, your why. My goal is to support you to do whatever it is that you want to do in your career and in your life. Thanks a lot, Nadia. It's always fun to work with you.
Thank you, Bonnie. And just a final reminder before I sign off, a recording of this webinar and a certificate of attendance will be emailed to you tomorrow. Our next ELSX will take place on Thursday, May 21st, where we will discuss the role of emotional intelligence for high performance. You can register for that or any of our upcoming webinars at elsforum.com. I hope you enjoyed today's ELSX, and a final thank you to everyone for joining us and for participating. We hope you have a wonderful week, and I wish you continued success. And thank you again, Bonnie.
Thanks a lot, everybody. And I'll send that PDF.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.